There's very little data, very little information on the loss of November 534 Alpha Whiskey, a King Air 300 aeromedical flight that went down in Chinle, Arizona yesterday, Tuesday, the 5th of August. My name is Juan Brown. You're watching the BLANCOLIRIO channel. Here's what little we know so far. Starting with the Aviation Safety Network, this accident occurred at 12:40 local time, so day VFR conditions. CSI Aviation, a very well-known and respected aeromedical Part 135 operator based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, with a fleet of these King Air 300 aircraft. It was November 534 Alpha Whiskey, a 1988 model King Air, 4 fatalities, 4 folks on board. The word I'm getting on the streets is that there were 2 pilots on board the aircraft, which I'm glad to hear that they are running a 2-pilot operation for the King Air 300. 1 flight nurse and 1 medic in the back of the aircraft. The accident occurred at Chinle Municipal Airport, Echo 91, in the northeast corner of Arizona in the center of the Navajo Nation, and it's presumed that this accident happened during the approach or landing phase. A Beechcraft 300 Super King Air November 534 Alpha Whiskey CSI Flight 534, call sign Sandia 534, was destroyed when it impacted terrain during a landing attempt on runway 36 at Chinle Municipal Airport, Chinle, Arizona. The 2 pilots and 2 passengers sustained fatal injuries. The purpose of the flight was to pick up a patient in a nearby hospital at Chinle. ADSB coverage stopped as the aircraft was preparing the approach to the airport. The accident site was located on an access road that runs parallel to and is 950 feet away from the runway. The airport elevation is 5,550 feet MSL and features a single north-south runway, 18 and 36, 6,902 feet. Now, the Chinle Airport does not have a lot of services, including weather. There's no weather reporting station there or AWOS. So the nearest weather is 37 miles away at Window Rock Airport. And talking to some of the folks that operate out of these airports, Window Rock is located roughly in the same valley. So this weather is pretty valid, and the winds specifically for Chinle. But Window Rock was reporting winds 270 at 17, gust 28. So that's a direct crosswind on a north-south runway. Visibility at 10 miles, no clouds, and 31 degrees temperature. So very warm with an altimeter setting of 3039 gives you a density altitude of 8,415 feet. So hot and high and windy and bumpy, but these are the kind of conditions that these experienced pilots are very used to operating in. So looking at the Google Maps, Chinle is located right here. Window Rock, where the weather came from, is located right down here. And if we zoom into the airport at Chinle, we can see the north-south runway with no taxiway. You back taxi on the runway, and a single aircraft parking area located right here, a windsock right here, and the crash site is apparently located right about here, right along the side of this access road that comes in from the highway. So as reported on Aviation Safety Network, just 960 feet off of the runway. Now, the key to this accident investigation, because there's so little information and so little data, is going to be any eyewitness reports. And if the ambulance was here waiting with the patient for the aircraft to arrive, it would be the ambulance crew, anybody on board that ambulance. If they witness this accident, that eyewitness report will be crucial to NTSB investigators, because there's very little other data or information at this time. Because as we look at the ADSB data from ADSB Exchange, we see the flight departing out of Albuquerque and just beelining for Chinle. And then the data drops off, and we've got good data here at, last valid data reporting point looks like 7,000 feet and 199 knots. And this data point is in question down here at the end, because here is where the airport is located and where the wreck is located. So going back to the Google Maps view, the standard procedure, talking to aeromedical pilots that have operated out of here in the past, the standard procedure is to overfly the airport. This is pretty standard backcountry procedures. overfly the airport, take a look at the windsock, see what the winds are doing, and then make a decision whether to go left traffic to the north runway or come around left traffic for the south runway. And if we look at the wind indicator, north-south runway with winds gusting up to 28 knots out of the west, it's simply a direct crosswind. And if we take a closer look at the photos from the Navajo Police Department here, there's very little left of the aircraft. Remember, this is an aeromedical evacuation flight, so they've got lots of oxygen bottles on board the aircraft. So unfortunately, there's very little left of the aircraft in the post-crash fire. So here's that access road leading to the ramp area with the aircraft located right next to it. Nothing much left but the tail section of the aircraft, and here you can see the buildings in the ramp area. So if the eyewitnesses were there, they would have been located fairly close to the crash site. And there you can see the windsock winds out of the west well after the crash. And again, the proximity to the buildings in the pad area, in the parking pad area. The only other help NTSB investigators might get is if there is any way to recover any of the SD card data from the avionics on board the aircraft to supplement this ADS-B data, because due to lack of towers in the area and lack of services, there's just very little ADS-B data of what actually happened here in the pattern. This is the operation that suffered the loss. This is November 531 Alpha Whiskey. The accident aircraft was 534 Alpha Whiskey. This is an example of the fleet of King Air 300s that they operate. This company's been around for over 40 years in the business, aeromedical and Part 135 air charters. If we look at their career page here, this is not a job for time building. The minimum requirements are for 1,500 hours total time, basically ATP standards to get hired here at CSI. 1,500 hours total time, 800 hours multi-time, 500 hours second in command. So we don't know what phase of flight this accident occurred in. Were they simply orbiting over the airport to check out the windsock when disaster struck, or had they already done an approach? Were they doing a missed approach? Was there some sort of a problem with the landing and approach? We simply just do not know at this time. One thing I will say is I think the gusty winds may very well be a factor in this accident. Strong winds out of the west, the aircraft ending up to the west of the runway. When you're up, gusts can kill you, especially in lighter, smaller aircraft. And Kel and I just had this conversation this weekend while we were operating off of the coast of Oregon. We were landing at a coastal Oregon airport, Florence, Oregon, coming into the flight pattern with a basically 30-knot tailwind off of the ocean, and we were going to turn into the wind and land, and the winds down at the runway were about 15 knots. So we're going to lose 15 knots of wind. Plus, when you maneuver from a 30-knot tailwind to a 30-knot headwind, if you're up there at level flight, that's a 60-knot difference. That's basically you're building in your own wind shear as you make that turn in the wind. Yeah, sure, you are turning in the fluid wind, but if you're trying to do a ground reference maneuver, changing that 30-knot tailwind to a 30-knot headwind, that can get you. So you need to do a longer, more stabilized approach, taking those winds into effect, and avoid low altitude maneuvering in these gusty, windy conditions. Correction, take the winds into account. Now, at this time, we don't have any idea if this had anything to do with the accident, but if there's anything we can take away from this, that would be my takeaway. Thank you so much for your support of this channel, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this channel possible. See you here.